Hello, I'm Helen Colebrook from Journal with Purpose and welcome to my free 5-day journaling workshop. I'm a two-time author, online teacher, blogger and YouTuber, and I just love sharing my passion for journaling. And my hope is that through this workshop you'll feel inspired to either start your own journaling journey, or if you've been doing it for a while, that maybe it'll give you some fresh ideas and inspiration to bring into your own journaling practice. So this is designed to be taken as a 5-day workshop. You'll notice that the video is broken into 5 sections, and that's so that you have time to carry out the journaling exercises and think about perhaps what's best working for you and what you want to take forwards. However, if you've got some free time on your hands and you're really in the mood for it, please feel free to whiz through all of the workshop in one go, whatever works best for you. In this workshop, I'm going to be covering lots of different areas, so lots of my favourite tips and techniques for using in my journals. So we'll be looking at doodling, brush lettering, using different creative techniques, recycled items, but we're also going to look at kind of how you can use your journals for planning, setting intentions, and some really quick and easy ways to get started with journaling so that you can make it part of your journaling routine. And as you're working through this workshop, if there's any pages you create in your journals and you're on Instagram, please do tag me in there. I'm at Journal with Purpose and I would love to see how you get on. And I've been wanting to put this workshop together for ages now. I think it can be quite overwhelming when you start journaling. If you look on social media, you'll just be flooded with tons and tons of beautiful images. And whilst they're really inspiring sometimes, they can also stop you in your tracks and feel like you don't know where to start or that you're not good enough. And this workshop really is designed to make sure that you feel confident in creating in your own way in a journal style that works for you. I promise you, you do not need to be making anything Instagram worthy, perfect, anything like that. This is a place for you to express yourself creatively and with your words, and you can't do that wrong. So I really hope you enjoy the workshop. I hope it gives you lots of ideas and inspiration. Welcome to day 1 of the workshop. I'm going to start off by sharing with you the insides of my different journals. I keep quite a few different styles and I don't use them each every day by any means. And the last thing I want to do is overwhelm you, but I'm hoping that if I show you the different styles, that you'll get a feel for which one would really suit you. And particularly if you're new in your journaling journey, if you see a style which you think, oh yeah, that's right, then I would definitely say start with that one and start with just one so that you don't find it too difficult to keep up with. I'm also going to talk to you about what I look for in a journal when I'm buying one, because there's so much choice out there and I think there's some things that are really important, well they are to me when I'm looking for a journal. So I'm hoping by talking you through those kind of technical aspects quite quickly that you'll get a feel for what might be important for you in a journal. I'm also going to talk you through my favourite stationery supplies. I don't think you need loads to get started and your choices may well be different to mine, but I have a kind of core staple group of items that I use in my journaling all the time, so I'm going to go over those quickly with you. And we're then going to create a cover page in our journals. We're going to claim it for our own. And I'm going to go through some simple doodles and banners and borders so that you feel you've got a few creative elements that you can add with confidence to your journal page. I'm going to start off by sharing with you the different types of journals that I keep. And the aim of this is definitely not to overwhelm you. In fact, my biggest advice to you would be to start with one type of journal. I see so many people start with lots of different journals and then they get overwhelmed and just stop journaling at all. So I would say start with one and then you can always add others once you feel you've got into a nice routine and habit with it. But I do think one of the keys is finding a journal that works for you. So I wanted to show you the different journals I use and the different styles so that hopefully you start to get a feel for what kind of journal you'd like to use. And I don't use all of these every day by any means. They're just ones that I can pick and choose from as I want to. So my first one, I'm using a Rhodia Goal Book, and this has dotted paper, and I use this for my bullet journal. And this is where I plan out all of my tasks, all of the things I want to get done, things about keeping our house clean, my morning and evening routine, different requests that I've had from people, really all of my planning. So absolutely everything that I need to get done in my life is included in this book. And this definitely helps to keep me on track. But if you're not into lots of planning or don't feel that you have loads to do, this might not be the right kind of journal for you. Next, I have a health and wellbeing journal. Again, this is Rhodia, but this time it's got grid paper in it. So you could pick any kind of topic that you want to give lots of focus to in your life. For me at the moment, it's health and well-being, but there could be things around your home, big projects you're working on, things in your garden, hobbies, career goals, anything like that. And you could decide to devote a whole journal just to that topic. And I find that's a really good way to give it lots of focus. So after that, one of the journals that I do use every day, and this is a traveller's notebook size. You'll see it's quite a lot smaller. It's narrower than an A5 size journal. And this is where I keep my daily journal. And in here, I write a few lines every single day just on the things that have been going on. There's only 6 lines in here. I find it really easy to keep up with, and this is a Good Impressions brand. And then at the end of the week, I tend to add some decorative elements and a summary of my week and things that are on my mind. And so this is a journal. I've been keeping this style of journal for a really long time now, and it works really well for me. I love knowing that some of those key moments are documented. Behind that, I have a craft insert, which is where I tend to do some creative journaling whenever I'm in the mood. And again, then a plain paper insert at the back. And again, this is for creative journaling whenever I'm in the mood. So you'll notice there can be quite big gaps in between when I use this journal. And then other times I'm in the mood for it on a really frequent basis. So that's just there whenever I want it. This has Tomo River paper in it, which is really thin, but holds up to fountain pen ink and other mediums really well. In a similar way to the creative journal I just showed you, I also have another creative journal. This one is A5 size from London Gifties, and it's got dotted paper in it. And the paper in this journal is really thick. So it's almost like card, and this is if I want to do creative journaling but I feel I want more space than my traveller's notebook insert. This is the journal that I'll turn to. And I use lots of mediums in here. Sometimes it's paint, printables, watercolour, gesso, stamping, collage, you name it. That's gouache background, so and I've used acrylic paint in here. So this is when I really want to express myself, but I also want to have some fun with my art and stationery supplies. So I've got a few more left to show you. So this is kind of a combination journal. This was very kindly made for me, and it's what would often be described as a junk journal. And all that means really is that it's made out of papers that might ordinarily be thrown away. I have to say this junk journal is far too beautiful to fall under that description really. It's got beautiful old vintage papers in there. When I've made them myself, I've often used things like envelopes that would have gone in the recycling, magazine pages, newspaper clippings, and I've then added my journaling on top of there. And this I've used predominantly as an art journal. So it's where I play with different mediums and techniques. Sometimes I'll add some journaling, a lot of the times I won't. This is more when I want to express myself perhaps through colours, textures, the topic that I'm adding on there, perhaps adding some little quotes. So that's really a combination of a junk journal and an art journal. So when I don't have much to say, but I do want to get creative and express myself. So we're on to the final two now. This is one I've made recently, and this is made out of packaging. So the outside was a cardboard box from Amazon, and I've just covered it in collage. And on the inside, I've used brown paper packaging, which again came inside an Amazon delivery. So journals don't have to be expensive. You could just decide to make one from things that you have at home. And then I've just done a really simple sewing method, and I've got a video all about this on my YouTube channel. And this I'm using for a creative challenge at the moment. I've only just started it, but also adding a little bit of journaling too. And the final journal that I'm going to share with you is one that I've made in an altered book. I've made the cover for it. So this was a book that I got from a charity shop. And in here, I'm just adding anything I like on top. You can see the book pages underneath, but I've used lots of printables, adding journaling. So again, I think the book probably cost me 50p or £1, something like that. And then I'm adding my journaling on top and made a cover to go with it. So I hope that gives you a feel for the different types of journal. As I said, the last thing I want to do is make you feel overwhelmed. It's more of if there's a particular journal there that you thought, yeah, that's the style for me, then probably that's the one to start with, and then just add little bits as you go. And the next thing I talk to you about is if I'm actually buying a journal, what I look for, what kind of qualities I'm looking for in it. So these are journals that are bought, and one of the first things to think about is what kind of size you want to work in. So I tend to use either an A5 size or a standard traveller's notebook size, which as you can see is the exact same height as an A5 journal, but it's quite a lot narrower. So thinking about how much you want to write and how much you put in your journal is a good place to start. One of the other things that I really look for in a journal is that it can lay flat. So with something like the Rhodia books, they're perfect for this. I don't like it when you've continually having to try and hold the pages down and write on them. I find that's when everything starts to get really messy and I get frustrated with the journal. And it's amazing the difference it can make just having a journal that lies flat. And the Rhodia books tend to be really good for this. And it's just such a nice experience to write on. And if you're looking for something that lays flat, typically you want to look for something with individual signatures, so the folded pieces of paper that are sewn or glued into the spine. And these all have that in common. So you'll find, this one doesn't lay flat quite as much purely because of the amount I've put in it, but it still stays flat a lot better than a stapled book would. So it's definitely something to look at. If you found you've not really got on with journaling, it could be something as simple as that you're getting frustrated with your book. The only place that that's different for me are these Good Impressions books, because these are actually stapled inside. However, the paper in these, as I mentioned, is Tomo River paper. It's really thin, and because of that, it doesn't kind of fold back on itself too much. And one of the things I do tend to use when working in a journal like this is a binder clip. So then at least I can just pop that over the top and again get that lay flat kind of experience from the book. So definitely something to think about. Other things to consider is whether you want a book that is lined, dotted, with grid, plain, so craft paper, or lots of different papers that perhaps you've got out of your recycling. And again, thinking about what is it that you're going to like looking at when you open your journal. I also like to consider the paper quality, and you'll find loads of reviews on different paper quality online. Tomo River paper is much loved. So it's very thin. You can see what's called ghosting because you can see through to the other side. But what you very rarely get is any bleed through, which is when your ink soaks through your pages. And bleed through for me is a massive no-nos in journals. I don't mind a little ghosting. I don't mind being able to see things, but I do not want my ink seeping through. And you can, of course, change the pens you're using to try and minimise the ink bleeding through. But it's much nicer if you've got journals which aren't going to present you with a problem. And this particular Rhodia Gold book has got brushed vellum on top of the paper, so it makes it really smooth as well, which is another huge plus. And as I showed you with the London Gifties one, this paper is almost like card, so it's not as smooth as this, but you know that it's going to hold up to lots of things. So one of the things you can look at is the paper weight to give you an indication. So often I think this book here is 80 GSM, so anything between 80 and I think this is 120 GSM. But Tomo River paper's a lot less, but you still don't get those issues. So I would say look at reviews of notebooks you're interested in. You'll nearly always find somebody else that has put a review on YouTube talking about the paper quality, or even ask for a sample of the paper before making a purchase, because journals can be quite expensive and you don't want to be really disappointed when it arrives to find that everything you're doing is seeping through your pages, or you can see far too much on the other page. One other type of journaling that I didn't mention earlier, and I probably forget about it because I never share it online, and that's is stream of consciousness journaling. And that is where you just write everything in your head. So you could start with a timer, perhaps set it for 5 or 10 minutes and just start writing. And it's a really good way of getting you in the habit of getting everything out of your mind onto paper. And sometimes I start off by writing things like, I don't know what I want to write about today, but I guess what's most on my mind is X, and that's making me feel like this. And I think one of the things that I could be focusing on to make that feel better is doing this. And by the end of that journaling session, I tend to have so many ideas, so much clarity, and I feel ready to start my day or unwind from the evening. So you can do creative journaling, memory keeping, stream of consciousness, planning, anything which is going to sit the best with your life. Before we get into a little journaling, I wanted to share with you some of my favourite stationery supplies. I know that the choice out there can be overwhelming, so I thought if I shared with you some of my personal must-haves, which won't necessarily be the same as yours, then it might just give you some ideas if there's things you're looking for. So one thing I always have is a black gel pen. I do a lot of my writing in this. I do use fountain pens and other types as well, but this Muji black gel pen is my absolute favourite. I always have a box of those in my drawer so that I don't run out. After that, I always make sure I have some kind of waterproof fine liner pen. So I've got a Staedtler pigment liner there, and I've also got the Sakura Pigma Micron pens. And they do pretty much the same thing, and it means if you want to add watercolour on top or even using coloured pens, that these pens are not going to smudge their ink all over your page. Next, I always like to have a black brush pen, and my favourite one for lettering is the Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen with a firm nib. And this is really lovely for lettering, and we'll do a little bit of that in one of the days of the workshop. I always have some kind of pencil handy. Washi tape is a huge must for me. You can get them in kind of a standard size roll, you can get skinny, in fact half of the size of this, really wide rolls. Such a lovely way to quickly be able to add some colour to your pages. Washi tape is a Japanese paper tape, so you can tear it really easily and put it on your pages as borders, around photos, anything like that. I have tons of washi tape. For adding colour, I love using coloured pencils. I've got a couple of favourite sets here. The Bruinzeel pencils, and these are from Royal Talons, and they're really lovely to use. And this is quite a new set actually, but the Derwent Chroma Flow, again, gorgeous. I don't think you need tons and tons of colours to get started, so just a nice simple set. I also really like using coloured pens, particularly brush pens for colour. Things like the Tombow ABTs are wonderful because you've got a big brush on one end for adding colour, and on the other end you've got a bullet nib, so you've got that for finer details. And you've also, as well with the Tombows, you've got Zebra Mildliner brush pens who have a really similar setup going on with the brush on one end and your bullet nib on the other. And along with that, I tend to use lots of watercolour in my journals as well, but that's entirely optional. I really wanted to share with you kind of my basic supplies. So now we've been over the different types of journals, the things I look for in journal quality, we're going to get on and create a really simple cover page with a few doodles. For this cover page, I'm going to be using my dotted Rhodia Goal book, and something with dots or grids is really helpful if you're wanting to do doodles and layouts, because you can count along them and get some really nice straight lines. The other things I'm going to be using is probably my Sakura Pigma Micron pen with a 01 nib, but any kind of black pen would be fine, so you could use something like the Staedtler or even a gel pen. I'm also going to be using my Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen, but any pen again will be fine, and I'm probably going to add some colour using pencils. And I wanted to start with a cover page because so many people talk about that fear of the blank page. So we're not going to be doing anything technical here at all. Just something really simple to hopefully get your confidence up and add a few creative elements. So we're just going to be working on one page. If you hear somebody talk about a journal spread, they're usually talking about something which covers 2 pages. So that would be a journal spread, and we're going to work on just one page. So for creating our cover page, we're going to start off by claiming our journal and writing our name roughly in the middle of the page. So kind of claiming it a bit like perhaps when we were at school and we would have written our names on our exercise books. I think it's good to start off by putting your own stamp on your journal. So I'm using my brush pen for this. Any kind of pen would be absolutely fine. And I'm just doing a really kind of basic print font here. And in one of the other classes, I'll go into brush lettering in a little more detail. Okay, so now we've got that. I want to add a nice banner around it. It's one of my favourite kind of doodles that I add to my journals. A really lovely way to make any of your headings stand out. So I'm going to start off by drawing a simple box around my words. And this is where dotted paper is really handy because you can just follow along with them. And you can also count them for layouts. If you're using a journal with plain paper or even lined, you could go onto perhaps something like Google Images, look for dotted paper, print out a sheet in bold and then put it underneath your paper so you can use that as a template. So now that we have the box, the first thing you want to do is check how high your box is. So mine is 1, 2, 3, 4 dots high. And because I want to turn this into a ribbon, I want to make sure that both ends are still that same height. So I'm going to draw a line coming out in the middle. And again, I've taken that 4 dots along and I'm going to count down 4 dots. And I'm going to draw another line, but I'm going to bring it 1 dot past this time. You then draw a line upwards, then a line to that corner, and I'm going to add some thin lines for a little bit of shading. And then we want to make this look more like the end of a ribbon. So I've just found the centre point and drawing those lines across. And now I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. I just think these are so fun to do. Really nice and easy. And so I'll often use it just for any headings that I want to stand out on my page. Okay, we've made a start on our cover page and started to claim this journal for ourselves. Another thing I always like to add on my cover pages is the from and to date, so I know when the journal started and when I finished it. And because I've got lots of journals now all completed, I like to know when I just flick to that opening page, I can see what kind of period they covered. So I'm just going to draw some kind of fun little notes. I think I might draw one above and one below. So I'm going to start off with kind of what looks like it's going to just be a simple box to start with. And I'm going to try and centre this. So that's 1, 2, 3 in from that side. 1, 2, 3. And just draw the bottom section of the box. And I thought it would be fun if it looked a little bit like it was kind of stuck on with perhaps some torn washi tape. So in the middle, I'm just going to draw some little jagged edges. So again, really simple, but just gives it that kind of fun effect. So I'm then going to write on here from, so I can add that first day in, and then I'm going to add exactly the same underneath. I have so many people say to me that they'd love to be able to add creative elements to their journals, but they don't feel they're creative at all. And I think something like this is a really lovely place to start. Because once you start getting some kind of simple elements in your library, as I like to call it, that you're confident with, you can just keep adding these to your journals and then just learn perhaps another really simple doodle, another style, and you'll just gradually build it up over time. I thought it'd also be fun to add a kind of simple border at the top and bottom of the page. So I'm going to start off by drawing a line. We will be doing this all the way along. We're just going to bring it kind of into a curved triangle using those dots. Then draw a little circle on the end of it. And you could use this as borders on your pages like we're doing here. Or you could do something like this underneath a heading to help it stand out. And you can leave all of these in black and white, or you could decide to add some colour. So just really simple things. But I think one of the good things about anything simple is that what you are doing is perhaps regaining your pen control. I often get told I have a very steady hand, which I do and I'm lucky with, but part of that has come with doing lots of things like this. I think over time I've probably built up a bit of strength and confidence and muscle memory, which has really helped me out. Okay, so we've got that along the top of our page, which is just something fun and simple, and I'm going to add exactly the same along the bottom. Okay, so that's our cover page pretty much done. You could decide to leave it just like that, or you could decide to add some colour using pencils or pens. And I think colour's another really lovely way to express yourself. You could pick your favourite colours, or you could look out of the window and perhaps choose some of the colours you see, something which ties in with the seasons. So say it's just another lovely way to think about ways of personalising your journals. So I think I'm going to start with a nice light blue for my ribbon, and then just add some darker blue for where the fold is. I loved using pencils until I started doing creative journaling. I don't think I'd really picked up much in the way of art supplies, not properly for years. And I think it just helps to bring back that joy perhaps you felt as a child when you were given a colouring book, or you used to do drawing and not worry about the results. It was just simple pleasure, and that's what I try and bring to my journals, is just getting that joy back. Nothing needs to be perfect. It's your journal. It's not something you're going to be submitting to an art show. It's a place to just relax. And I find it astonishing yet true how much more relaxed I can feel just through the simple process of adding a few doodles and colouring them in. It's one of my favourite ways to wind down every evening. And supplies like this, there's absolutely no reason at all you can't take them over to the settee and just add a few little bits, perhaps while there's something on the telly in the background, or whatever you like doing. And one of the things that I've loved is with some of my books, because I've got a book out on kind of doodles for your journal pages and ones with layouts, is the amount of people that have sent me photos of them doing this alongside their children, and their children following along and doing these too. So if you struggle for kind of quiet time to yourself, it might be something that you can get your children interested in as well. So yeah, I'm just going to use that dark blue now along here. And I think I'm also going to use that dark blue inside the little dots. But I definitely think you could do this kind of cover page in any sort of journal, whether you're working in a junk journal, dotted, plain. These banners and elements you could add to anything. Okay, so the last thing that I need to do now is just add some colour to these. And I think for that I might go for 2 different shades of green, again keeping a lighter colour where I'm going to be writing, and then using the dark green for the sticky note. And throughout the next few days we're going to do quite a few different styles of journaling, and I'd encourage you to just have a go whilst watching me. And I really hope that by the end of that 5 days you're going to feel that you've got a few different things which perhaps you really enjoyed, really resonated with you, so that you can then just pick those up and do them with confidence in your journals. And I want to make sure we cover quite a few different styles and methods, just so that you feel confident really. And I think when you feel confident and you enjoy it, it's something you're far more likely to do on a regular basis. Okay, just going to add these dark green strips now. And we are nearly there with a really fun looking cover page. Well, there you go, that's it. I really hope you've enjoyed day 1. If you do decide to have a go at any of the journals pages that we create over the next few days and you're on Instagram, please do tag me in on your photos. I'm at Journal with Purpose on there. I would love to see them, and share them in my Instagram stories so that other people can see what you've created too. Okay, I shall see you tomorrow. Welcome to day 2 of the workshop. Today we're going to cover something which I think is really important, and that is setting intentions for your journal. So this session today is only going to be quite short, but I want to kind of plant the seed in your mind to think about, what do you want to use your journal for? I see so many people start off journaling, often with lots of different journals on the go, really excited, but then over time they lose their inspiration and their mojo for their journals. And I think that's often because people have seen all these things that other people are doing, feels like a great idea, but then when it comes to keeping up with it, maybe it's not adding quite the value you'd hoped. So I'm really going to encourage you to take some time to think about what you want to use your journals for. And I'm going to talk you through what the intentions for my own journals are, because those are the things that bring me back to my journals day after day after day. We're also going to do another fun little bit of doodling and cover some very basic brush lettering skills. So I hope you have lots of fun. We're going to create a really simple intentions page for our journals, and I think it's a really valuable page to have sat quite near the front of your journal if you can, just to remind you of why you wanted to start journaling and what you're hoping to get out of it. I'm going to be using some washi tape to start off by creating a lovely border around my page. And this is one of my favourite ways, again, to get past that fear of a blank page. And very often you'll notice in my journals, I just have a strip of washi tape along one side. And sometimes I will layer 2 different tapes, so I might then put another one, kind of just like this, a different colour for interest. But on this one, I'm going to do it all of the way around. And I always recommend finding some easy ways to kind of break your pages in and get those first few pages done in your journal as well, so you kind of set the tone for what you want your journaling to be about, and just get a few little tips and techniques that you're comfortable with and you can use again and again on lots of different style of journal pages. So I'm just layering them over at the moment, and then I'm going to trim off those edges. And I'm all for things which just make your page look inviting and something you know that you're going to want to fill out. I'm now going to write the heading intentions for my journal, and I'm going to be using my Fudenosuke brush pen from Tombow. And on my blog I do have a free brush lettering workbook. I also have a class on Skillshare all about brush lettering as well. But the main things you want to remember when you're using a brush pen is to apply pressure on the way down the page and leave it nice and light when you're coming up the page, and that's how you get that lovely differential between the thick and thin strokes. And in my workbook there's lots of kind of drills, things that I would recommend practicing on a regular basis so that you get nice and confident using the brush pen. So it's just some kind of simple shapes and practices so that once you then come to forming letters, you'll feel you've got hopefully all of the different brush strokes that you need. So you can copy along with me and do a brush lettered heading, or you could just use any pen and write it out. And now I've got my heading, I think I might just draw a nice little arrow underneath it just to show that that's the heading, and I can add my journal writing underneath. So I'm going to start off just with a line. Then draw the head of my arrow up here. Again, this is where dots really help because you can just create your triangles using those dots for reference. And just add some really simple, fun designs. So I think I might have some hearts in the middle. And then colour those in. And I love having just lots of little doodly designs that I can add really quickly and easily to any of my journal pages. And something like this, I'm sure, is something that anybody could do. I'm going to add 3 little lines. And then I think I might add a bit of colour, and I'm going to use one of my Tombow ABT brush pens. It's a really quick and simple, but I think makes such a lovely difference. So now we've got the heading, the basic framework. I think what would be really nice to do is spend a few moments now thinking about how and what you want to use your journal for. How do you want to feel? What kinds of things do you want to document? What's really important to you? Okay, so I'm going to read to you what I've written down in case it sparks something that might work for you too. So intentions for my journal: somewhere to dream and plan, a safe place to express myself, document all of life's ups and downs, record my progress in key areas, identify what's working and what I need to change, somewhere to get creative, document fun times with family and friends, try out new techniques and supplies, use as a tool to motivate myself, somewhere I can be truly myself, plan out big goals and projects, personal development, record hobbies and document my favourite books, films, meals and days out. So those tend to be the main things that I use my journals for, but you can use yours for absolutely anything. But I would really encourage you to create a page like this near the front of your journal. So if ever you'll get to the point where you're in a little bit of a slump with your journaling, you can come back to what your original intentions were. And of course, you can always add to this over time. Hello and welcome to day 3 of the workshop. Today is all about quick and simple ways to get journaling. And I know that each of us has a different amount of time that we either can or are prepared to spend journaling every day. So I really wanted to include something which covered really quick ways to document some of the important moments in your life. So I'm going to go over 2 different examples, and I think they're really worth considering. And if you're new to journaling, perhaps starting with only these 2 things initially, so that you can then gradually build on them over time. I think one of the things which stops so many people in their tracks is getting overwhelmed. So setting up lots of pages in their journals which need completing and filling out every day. And then kind of life gets in the way, things get busy, and then you've got lots of half-started pages and it can be really disheartening. And that's the last thing I want for you. So I'm hoping that through sharing these really simple and fun ideas that you'll be able to get started with your journaling straight away today. And even if you've only got 5 minutes a day, you will be able to keep up with this. We're going to start off with something incredibly quick and simple to really help get you in that habit of doing a little bit of journaling every day. And we're going to use just 1 page in your journal for this. And we're going to add the heading 1 line. And if you've seen my bullet journal setups on YouTube, you'll know that this is something I do every month without fail. So it's a really simple concept. Every single day, you're just going to add 1 line of journaling. And you're going to have to really kind of think and condense it down to what were the most important parts of the day, what things stand out to you. So once we've got our heading, we're going to write out the numbers, and obviously this will change every month. But let's just say we've got a month with 31 days in it. So just going to add all of those numbers down the left-hand side. And I don't like to have blank pages in my journals or blank sections, so that in itself encourages me to spend some time filling this out every day. And you really are talking about 2 minutes required to fill this out. So however pressed for time you are, I would say this is a really, really good place to start. And it then means that if you want to do any other kind of longer form journaling, you're going to have everything already documented here. So I'm going to show you an example. My one in my bullet journal is set out slightly differently, just because I like to keep it lined up with my Be Proud page. But so I've just got a whole list here of the things I've done every day. And say if I then want to try and remember what day something happened, I can look back on here. But also, say if I want to do a bit of longer creative journaling, I could have a quick look through and think, okay, what days, what kind of things happened during the month? What do I really want to explore a bit more and document? So now we've got this, I'm going to add, as always, a little bit of simple decoration. I think it makes all the difference. So I'm going to put a little bit of washi tape along the bottom there, and then add a few quick doodles along the top. But you can see how quick and easy that was to set up, and it's one of the things I find people say to me a lot is how do you find time to journal? And partly that's about setting yourself up a routine that works really well for you. But also it's finding some nice, quick and simple things which you know you're going to have time for. So I think I'm going to draw some little branches coming out. Again, you'll see nothing I'm doing here is taking very long at all. Some nice simple leaves. But even the process of just doing this, I find incredibly relaxing. And I guess this whole page is going to take me, a maximum of kind of 10 minutes to set up. And of course the decoration is entirely optional. But I'm already thinking about just how nice that's going to look once it's all filled out. You could add leaves, you could change the colours for the seasons when you're adding these little branches. Or you could add some simple flower doodles. And again, I'm going to use my green Tombow ABT, but this time I'm going to use the bullet nib on the other end because the brush pen's probably going to be a bit big for these leaves. And finding a routine, I think, is one of the key things to getting your journaling habit really going. So I have a few times a day where I always journal. Often once dinner's cooking, that gives me a few minutes. If things are actually in the oven or even on the top, I could easily come and fill this out whilst dinner doesn't need my attention. And I often take my journals over onto the settee in the evening. Again, if it's something I'm really into, I might not journal, but a lot of things I just have on in the background. But again, even during the television adverts, I'd be able to write something in there, no problems at all. And often first thing in the morning, again, I get my journals out and perhaps just add a few thoughts about how I'd like my day to go. And that really helps me to set the tone. So that's the first kind of really quick and simple page for just getting into the habit of documenting every day. And the next thing we're going to look at is making a little journal zine. And this is something I completed one of these every month last year. And it's a lovely way, perhaps when you look back through your one line a day and pick a few of the things that really stood out to you. So you can see here I've documented things like hobbies that I'm currently enjoying, books that I was reading, things that I was watching, and then summarised my month. In this one again, another book that I was reading, focused on how I wanted to feel. Big things that happened, that was when my second book was released. I added a little bit of creativity with painting and doodling, things that I was currently obsessed with, and again an end of month review. Really quick and simple to make, a lovely place to put in photos, favourite quotes, so you could document your hobbies, projects, anything else you've got going on. So we're going to make one of these really quickly together. So you want to start off with a standard piece of paper. This is just some A4 printer paper. I have gone for one that's slightly thicker just so that it holds up well, but anything is fine. And first of all, you just want to fold that in half vertically. And if you've got a bone folding tool or something to get those edges crisp, great. Otherwise, you could use the edge of some scissors like I'm doing, or a ruler. We're now going to open that up and we're going to fold it in half again, but in the other direction. And you want to try and get this fairly accurate with where you're folding it, but it's really not the end of the world, so don't worry too much. And now we're going to fold this half here back down to your other fold. Again, just make those lines as crisp as you can. Turn your paper over and then fold this end down. I think these are just such lovely little booklets to have. And I like just changing how I decorate them each month and what I'm putting inside them. Okay, so when we've got all of this folded, you want to have your paper like this, so you've got one fold up. And we're just going to make a cut here all the way to that centre point there. So again, you can see this is taking hardly any time. As soon as we've made that cut, you can just fold these together into so you've got a cross shape, and then bring your covers together. And that is the basics of your little journal zine already done. Now I'm going to add some decoration to mine. And I'm also going to tidy up. I've got a corner punch, which is really handy to be able to use to just give it a little bit of extra style. But if you don't have one, you can definitely just leave those corners pointed. I just like the look of these little rounded edges. And this is a large size corner punch. Just going to do that around each of the sides. And I find they're such a lovely size to work in. If each weekend of the month you just filled out, a little spread here, you'd have that all done by the end of the month and just have some lovely bits documented in there. Now I'm going to decorate mine with some patterned paper, and if you've got anything like wrapping paper, any bits of scrapping paper from projects, anything like that, it would be great. Or you could, of course, paint them, add stickers, decorate in any way you like. I'm going to use my glue stick. Just pop some glue all over the cover. Now this is quite thin paper, so I've noticed I can actually see the white through, but I'm really not worried about that at all. And one of the things I do quite like to do is change how I decorate the zines with different styles each month. Just keeps it really interesting. So I'm just going to place my paper on top of there. Smooth it down as best as I can, then fold my zine back together, and now trim around the edges. And I already think that looks so pretty and inviting to write in. I'm going to add a little quote on the front of mine. I've got some Tim Holtz stickers. They're called Small Talk, and I love these. I use them all the time. Just little quotes on both black and white sticker paper. And I think, and so the adventure begins. That sounds perfect for any new journal, because I always think you don't know what's going to have happened by the end of it. And I often like cutting these just so I can play around with how I place them. And then I'd usually also write the month on the front as well. So there you go, that's your little journal zine all ready to use. Very little pressure to fill that out throughout the course of the month. So I hope between the one line a day and the journal zine, that's given you some lovely ideas to just start getting you into that regular habit of journaling. Hello and welcome to day 4 of the workshop. In today's session, I'm going to cover something which I get asked about all the time, and that's how I seem to manage to get so much done. And I do get a lot done, I am busy, I am productive, but I have some certain ways that I use my journal to really help me with that. So I'm going to talk you through some of my key pages in my bullet journal and how I use that for planning, so that you can get a feel for whether some of those systems might work for you too. And I find that when I plan in my journals rather than on a computer, that it works much better for me. I like being able to add some decoration. I like to be able to have it open on my desk next to me so that I can add down thoughts and tasks whenever they come up. And I don't know, for some reason I feel much more committed to my goals and the things I want to get done once I've written them on paper rather than type them on the computer. So we're going to talk through that, and then we're going to set up one of my favourite sorts of weekly pages in my bullet journal, and that's where I organise everything I want to get done over the week. So I'm going to talk you through how I set that journal page up, and hopefully it will give you some ideas for your own too. One of the things I get asked about all the time is how I manage to get so much done. And the main reason for this is because I use my bullet journal in a way that really works for me. So I'm going to talk you through a little of the process and then set up one of the pages that I use a lot together. So at the beginning of each month, I write out my main tasks, so the things I really want to get done during the month. There'll be lots more than that I also need to get done, but they're the things I really want to focus on. I use my calendar to write out any deadlines I've got coming up and events that I'm attending, whether that's in person or online. And then I've got a good visual idea of how much space I've got left in that month to be able to start working on different projects. And at the end of each month, I always do a little review about how things have gone and where I need to perhaps shift my time and energy the following month. Behind that, I've got my master task list, so it's kind of like an organised brain dump. It's everything that I've got that I want to be working on in each area of my life. So JWP for me, that's Journal with Purpose, everything that I'm hoping to get done, not necessarily that month, but I don't want those ideas to go anywhere. So sometimes I jot them down and it might be that I move them over for quite a few months before I get to them, but they'll never be forgotten if they're written in here. This for me is social media posts, because that's something I do on nearly a daily basis, posting on one of the social media platforms. So I like to have here everything that I've worked on and created so that I can quickly remember what photos I have that I can share. And I've got some other work related tasks and things for me and around the home. So that's everything that I've kind of got on my mind at the moment. Then I've got some more kind of journaling pages. That's my gratitude habits, which I think is really important to think about which habits are going to set you up for success. And this is my 1 line a day that we've already covered, and my Be Proud pages. And then behind that, what I would consider is kind of the most important element of my planning process is my weekly and daily pages. So usually over the weekend, I will sit and create these pages for the following week. And again, I'll go back and look at my calendar, write down any deadlines, but I'll also start often penciling in what I'm hoping to work on each day. And I'll look back at my master task list and write in here the tasks that I'm hoping to get done during that day, bearing in mind any deadlines I've got coming up that need to take priority, plus other things I'd also like to spend my time on. Then I set out my top 3 for each day. So I tend to do this in the evening for the following day because priorities can shift and change quite quickly. At the end of the week, I will do a quick review and also make a note of anything which needs to be done the following week so that I've got that in mind. So that might be things that I didn't have a chance to get to, I will move over. Or if I write those down at the beginning of the week, that could be because I'll be thinking if I get any free time, I might start working on some of these. And behind that, I then just have something really easy. And this is just my daily task list where every single day I'll just use as much space as I need. And my workflow tends to be quite busy. That was a calmer week for me. It was the first week back in the new year. But I do tend to have quite a lot that I want to get done. So you can see here, that's a nice full week with all of my tasks there. So anything I didn't get to, I just migrate with a little arrow so that I know then that needs to fall in the following week. So then that will appear in my task lists on the weekly planner afterwards. So I'm going to talk you through quickly, we're going to set up a weekly planning page together. You don't need to use the same headings that I do. Pick some that are going to work well for you. So I'm going to start off by drawing the boxes on my left-hand page, and I'm going to be using a black Muji gel pen, but any pen is going to be fine for this. And I tend to come in 1 dot from that left side and come down 5. And one of the reasons I really like this layout is because it always then leaves me room for some easy decoration with some washi tape. I then count along 12 dots. So that's going to be the shape of my first column. I then go along 2 dots and again count along 12. And on both of these columns, I allow 2 dots for where my heading is going to be, and then for each day, I allow 4 dots. So I'm going to do this all the way down the page and then draw the lines around. And now I've got those 2 boxes drawn out. I'm just going to start adding the lines across for every day. You could use a ruler for this, but as I've mentioned before, I'm more than happy with slightly wonky, wavy lines. And as these pages for me are about productivity and planning, I don't like to spend too much time on them because for me that would kind of defeat the point of why I'm doing them. And yeah, there's lots of pre-printed planners out there, and I've tried quite a few myself, but none of them work as well for me as this particular layout. And I think that's one of the things to really bear in mind, is that you can tweak these things as often as you like until you get something that works precisely right for you. Your life and the demands of things you need to get done will be completely different to somebody else's. You might have loads you need to get done, or there might be very little. And you might decide that just 1 page for your weekly is going to be absolutely fine. Or that you might want to use these columns for something different. In the past, I've used this second column as a meal planner, but I now tend to do my meal planning in my health and well-being journal. So I now like to use this for my priorities. So now I'm going to start adding my headings, and again I'm going to use my Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen with a firm nib. So I'm going to write events in that top column. And say some of this is events, a lot of it might just be things that I need to work on, deadlines, anything that's date specific. And then in here, I'm going to write top 3. And then I'm going to just write down, so I tend to just do the shortened version for each day. So I've got Mon there for Monday, and I do all the same all the way down. And these pages, they probably take me about 15 minutes to set up. And whilst that's longer than it would take if I was using a pre-printed planner because the layouts would already be there, I know from experience that they just don't offer me the flexibility that I need, particularly then when I want to write out my daily plans. Anything that's pre-printed is going to have a limit on space, so I'll either end up with more space or less space than I need. So I'm going to pretend this is one of those lovely months where the Monday starts on the 1st and just add the dates there. And then I'm going to write out my 1, 2, 3 for each day. And I found this really helpful, this particular column, since I've swapped it from my meal planning, because when I open up my emails in the morning, I can have all sorts of other things that kind of try and derail my day, is the way I see it. So I like to go back to my priorities and think, what did I really want to get done that day? And has what's come in, has that changed anything? Is that really more important, or is that something which perhaps could become a priority for the following day? So now I've got those, I'm going to follow that line across the top and again count along 12 dots. Then I'm going to do the same along here. And as last time, leave 2 dots down for my heading. And on this column, I'm going to bring it right down to the bottom. And for this one, I'm going to bring the line down to the bottom of where Thursday is. It really doesn't matter if you mess up the dots, if any of your lines aren't level with the others. I have plenty where I've miscounted, and I really wouldn't worry about it. It's one of the things I get asked about all the time is, what do I do about mistakes? A lot of mistakes I just leave exactly as they are, unless it's really, really important to me. As long as the journal page is still doing the job that I'd wanted it to do, I'm really not going to worry. If I make a complete disaster of a page, I have just glued 2 pages together before. What I tend to avoid doing if I can is ripping pages out, because that can ruin the binding of your journal, and that could cause some other pages to fall out, so it can cause you more problems than you had in the beginning. So I might glue them together, I might just turn the page, I might use something like some brown paper from a brown paper bag and just tear and glue that over the mistake and write on top of it, or white paper, depending on what look I'm going for. But I think anything that is kind of hand done, you have to accept that there's a chance of mistakes in a way that you can't easily fix in the way you would with a computer. I also think that some of the mistakes, if you like, that I've made in my journals have led to some of my best journal pages. For my headings for this spread, I'm going to write tasks, and then I'm going to write next week and review down at the bottom. I don't give 2 lines for the heading of review because I want to leave as much space there just to be able to jot some thoughts down. Okay, because I was talking as I was doing this, is a classic time for me to be able to show you how I might fix that mistake. That should say next week. Now, in all honesty, probably I would just leave that because I know exactly what it is supposed to say. But I have got some spare dotted paper, so I'm going to just cut some of this out. It's good timing with talking about mistakes. So if it wasn't for the fact I was filming this, I would more than likely just leave it. So I'm going to cut that down, and I think you need to learn to be forgiving with yourself in your journals. I think that's really important. Okay, I've got my Pritt stick handy, and I'm going to add that right over the top. And at the moment you can see the writing underneath, but by the time you then add your lettering on top, it's probably really not going to be very noticeable at all. And people always look at my journals and say, how do you do all those without any mistakes at all? See, this is the reality. They're often there, but you probably just don't notice them. So I'm going to add that over the top. Add next week. and then add my review down the bottom. So as you can see, it's really quick fix, no problems at all. Now I always like to add some simple decoration to my pages. I think it makes them more appealing for me to use. So I'm just going to use a little bit of washi tape and just add those along the top and the bottom. And I think that's one of the things that I like to use, tapes that perhaps with the colours that tie in with the seasons, or just something I find really beautiful. And then I look forward to opening my journal every day and just adding some more writing to it. And that looks so much more appealing to me than a blank page. So that's some really quick decoration added. And you'll notice that in mine as well, then often I'll also go in and add at the end of the week, perhaps some little stickers or maybe doodles, anything else which just makes it a little bit prettier. So the very final thing I'm going to do is I like to add some shadows around my boxes, and I'm using a grey zebra mildliner brush pen for this. Entirely optional, and sometimes I will change the colour to match in with the washi tape, but I really do quite like just the simple grey, and I'm going to do that along the bottom and the side of each of those columns. So I really hope you've enjoyed this. You can see how quick and easy it is to set up some planning pages in your journal that work just for you. And have a play around with the headings. Think about which bits you want to focus on, whether it's going to help you to have a little review at the end of each week, and how perhaps you want to prioritise things. So I really hope you found that helpful and it's given you a nice, quick and easy way to set up some pages in your journal. Hello and welcome to day 5, our final day of this free journaling workshop. I really hope that you've enjoyed it so far. Today we're going to cover one of my absolute favourite journaling techniques, and that is creative journaling with found or recycled items. So I'm going to be sharing with you some of the different things that I have in my stash, things like paper bags, book pages, tissue paper, and show you how you can put them to good use in your journals. I love having lots of beautiful journaling supplies. You can see behind me all of the different kinds of stationery and art supplies that I have. I've built those up over a really long period of time, and I truly believe you can create some of the most beautiful pages by using everyday found items. So that's what this session is going to be all about, just adding some really easy creative elements and then a journaling space to be able to write about the thoughts that are on our mind. So I've started off by gathering some supplies together. I've got some plastic packaging which I will definitely be using, and I'll be sharing that with you in a moment. And I've also got things like a brown paper bag, some tissue paper, an old book page, and things like magazines and catalogues. And these are some of my favourite kinds of supplies to use in my creative journal. I don't quite know entirely how I'm going to use each of those yet, and in fact I try not to plan out my journal pages too much in advance. I like to just keep playing with the different supplies, seeing how they look once they're on the paper, and then really just trying to be a bit more intuitive with how I create. I'm also going to be using 2 Tombow ABT brush pens, and if you want to follow along with me, any water-based kind of felt tip pens will be fine for this. And I'm also going to be using a little water spray, but even if you can just fill a cup with some water, that will be fine. So I'm using quite a thick papered dotted journal, and that's because I am going to be adding some water to it, but actually it's not going to be loads of water, so any kind of journal will be fine for this. So the first thing I'm going to do is start off with creating some colour to go on this left-hand page. And this is where I'm going to use this plastic packaging. And if you've seen some of my other YouTube videos, you're probably quite familiar with this technique. It's something I love to do. So I'm going to just grab my pens and I'm going to scribble onto the surface to transfer some ink. And the results of this are different every time I do it, and that's one of the things I love. It's unpredictable, and that's partly why I don't bother planning things out too much in advance, because with something like this, really almost anything can happen with where the ink's going to end up. So yeah, I've just got some ink now transferred over onto here from my pens. And I'm now going to give it a quick spray using this spray bottle. But if you've just got a glass of water, just dip your fingers in and splash it over the plastic. And you want to have a reasonable amount of water on here, because what you want to do is activate the inks. And now I'm going to bring my journal back. And I'm going to turn this over and transfer the ink onto my journal page. And I'm going to use my fingers then to start spreading that ink around and letting the colours blend in with each other. And when I lift this off, there'll still be quite a lot of ink left on the back, and I want to transfer over as much of it as I can to get beautiful watercolour splotches. And you'll notice I've had a few other colours transfer over as well, and that's because I've used this packaging so many times. But actually I love that it brings some of those colours back to life again that I've previously used. So really nice and quick and easy, but I've got a bold splash of colour now on my page. Before I move on to the next stage, I'm going to quickly dry this off using a heat tool. You could use a hairdryer or just let it dry naturally. So now that that's nice and dry, I want to turn this into kind of a heading page. So I've got one of my printable quotes. You could add some lettering yourself, print in a quote off the internet, anything you like for this. And I thought it would be nice to tear off a little bit of this paper bag and then glue the heading on top. So I would say always be on the lookout for packaging that you can use in your journals. In fact, if you follow me on YouTube, you might see that recently I've made a whole journal just out of packaging. And it's just such a lovely way of being able to create without kind of any pressure, because these are things that you've just picked up along the way. So anything like napkins, leaflets, anything like that, I would definitely say grab hold of them. Okay, I really like how that's looking, so I'm going to use some Pritt stick. Any glue stick will be fine. And I chose that particular quote to remind me to talk about it, because I see a lot of people discouraged when they share their journaling pages online because they feel that they perhaps don't look as good as somebody else's or didn't come out how they expected. They feel their lettering's not as good, their artwork's not as good, and it's a reminder that this is your personal journey, and just try your best to enjoy that. Don't compare your journal to anybody else's, because it really is the quickest way to stop yourself enjoying the process. So just enjoy the journey, enjoy learning new things, and I love finding out what works and what doesn't. I've got found plenty of things that don't work, but just try and enjoy the process as much as you can without worrying about how it compares or stacks up to somebody else's. So I've got that there now on my left hand page, and what I want to do is kind of add a little bit of balance on the other side. So I think what I might do is go back to my paper bag, tear off another long strip and glue 2 pieces on the other page. I like torn edges. You could of course be precise and cut these if you like, but I'm a real fan of torn rough edges. I think it adds something really pleasing to your journal pages, and perhaps for me it also represents the lack of need for perfection. I don't need things to be neatly cut. So I think that's going to look quite nice, just to offer a bit of balance. So we've got that brown on this page, bringing the same over onto the other side. And I often do that in my journal pages. You'll notice that there'll be, if there's something I do on one side, I might do it on the opposite page as well, or at the very least perhaps use something of the same colour. And that's really just to try and make those 2 pages look like they belong together, even if they're really different. I find this process so relaxing, just looking through different pieces of paper and scraps of things that might otherwise have ended up in the recycling bin and finding a way to use them to decorate my journal pages. Next, I thought it would be interesting to see if anything from this tissue paper might work. As you can see, I've already cut out bits of it previously, but I love it if I have something from a shop or somebody sends something to me wrapped in tissue paper. It always goes in one of my drawers ready for use at a later date. So I'm going to have a look, I think, at some of these individual images. In fact, I quite like this plant here that still has the bulb attached at the bottom. I'm just going to cut around here. But one of the things I've found is that I've become kind of really observant over time. Even if I go into a coffee shop, I'm looking at the napkins or the bags that have got the sugar in them, any of the packaging that comes on the drinks, anything like that. It's always worth keeping an eye out for it. Tea bags as well, the actual packaging of tea bags is often so beautiful. Okay, I really like that. I think that's going to work well there. And again, I want to have a little bit of balance, so I think I might cut out another 2 images to use on this side. Okay, I've just played around a little bit with where they're going to go on my page, and I'm happy with that. And you'll notice I often do things in 3s, and that's just because it can draw your eye really nicely around the page. So having anything in odd numbers is always a good way to go. If you have just 2, it can kind of make your eye just stop somewhere in the middle. If you've got 3 or odd numbers, it encourages your eye to just travel around the journal page. So again, I'm just using the glue stick to put these down. There's so many beautiful journaling supplies, and I'm lucky enough to have lots of them. Things like stamps, stickers, washi tapes, different coloured inks, lots of pens, pencils, and I've built those up over the years. And I love using them. I'm really lucky to have them, but I really don't like it when I feel that people don't take up journaling because they think it's too expensive and they get so overwhelmed by the amount of supplies out there. I've shared with you some of my absolute favourites and the ones that I love using. But I'd also really encourage you to look around, anything that comes through your letterbox, anything you see when you're out and about. It's just such beautiful ways of adding decoration, and it's very likely that nobody else is going to have picked up exactly the same things as you to use in your journals, so it's another way to make them really unique and special to you. I can remember who sent me this in the post, this tissue paper, and that's now formed another really lovely part of my journal. Okay, the next thing I want to do is add a little bit of lettering onto this right hand page. And I think I'm going to add some up here and some along the bottom. So again, it balances out from that quote there. And you'll see this is why I don't plan too much in advance, because I don't know what shape the papers are going to be in once I've torn them, what kind of shape and splatter of ink I'm going to get when I've added it to this side, which is why I like to have an idea perhaps of supplies and colours that I want to use, but not necessarily how the page is going to come together. Okay, so I've just added enjoy the journey and be yourself. Again, as reminders to enjoy the different pages you create in your journal, whether you end up liking the finished outcome or not. Enjoy the fact that you've taken time for yourself, you've tried something different, and you've allowed yourself that time and space to be creative and express yourself. And also, your journal is the perfect place to be yourself without worrying about what anybody else thinks and about kind of fitting in. This is your space to be able to create and write in any way you like. I'm now going to add my journal writing in this space here. I'm using my black Muji gel pen, but again, anything will do. And I now find it so inviting to write in and far less intimidating, so I've just got this space to fill rather than those two whole blank pages staring at me. And now that my journal writing is all added, I want to do one final touch, and that's to bring a little bit of that yellow and green over onto this page. So again, I'm going to use my plastic packaging, but I'm going to do something slightly different this time. So again, I'm going to transfer a little bit of that ink across. Sorry for the squeaking. And I'm now going to use a water brush. So this is a brush with water already in the barrel, but any kind of paint brush that you just dip in water would be fine. I want to mix in a little bit of water with both of these colours. And then I'm going to apply them onto my journal page. I wanted a little bit more control than just turning the plastic over, because I don't want it to go all over the top of my journal writing. But so I'm just mixing some water up here, and I'm just going to apply it quite delicately over my journal page. And so it really is just to bring across a splash of a little bit of that colour. So I'm starting off with the yellow, and then I'm going to pick up some of the green to add in there too. So again, nothing fancy, just something to help tie those 2 pages together. I really hope you've enjoyed following along with this process of creating a kind of creative journaling page using lots of different recycled items. Thank you so much for joining me on this workshop. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got some new ideas, inspiration and techniques that you can use in your own journals. Journaling has brought me so much joy and really helped me to focus on the things which are most important to me in life. So just my biggest hope is that it brings some of that about for you too. If you've watched this and think, yeah, you're really interested in journaling and want to learn more, I would definitely say have a look at my YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. I release videos there as regularly as I can, and sometimes they're flip throughs, other times it might be tutorials on journaling, doodling, lettering, so definitely have a look there. I'm also an online teacher at Skillshare, and on my blog, if you look on the online classes page, you'll see that there is a link there for each of the classes I have on offer. And if you're new to Skillshare, you'll get a free trial as well. So by all means, just click the link and take a couple of classes and see what you think. As I've mentioned, I'm a 2-time author, so I have 2 books out. And if you look on most bookshops under Journal with Purpose, you should find those. And one of them has just got tons of doodles and creative elements for you to be able to copy along with and add on your own journal pages. And my newest book is all about different journal layouts and also prompts to get you thinking about the sorts of things you want to write about in your journals. And finally, I also have a page over on Patreon where you can become a member of my journaling club. And on there, each month I share creative challenges, journal prompts, Patreon exclusive videos and tutorials, and digital printables to use in your journals. So if that sounds of interest, then just have a look for that as well. That's also linked on my blog. I'd love to see you there. So I hope you've had loads of fun with this, and I just really hope that this starts a love for journaling in your own life too. Thank you again.